Welcome to Group 11's presentation, #Ferguson Syllabus. Group members are Matthew Gadberry, Jennifer Willenborg, Caritza Mariani, Denny Esquivel, and Julie Richards. Ferguson Syllabus. Social movements are, 1, the symptom and the instruments of progress. Ignore them and statesmanship is irrelevant. Fail to use them and it is weak. We chose to do a presentation on the Ferguson syllabus because it was a precursor to several other syllabuses that have popped up as this movement progresses in the United States. Before we can get into the syllabus, it's important to know a little bit of the history. Ferguson is located in Missouri, and the city itself has a population that's 67% African American. However, life is not equitable for African American people and Caucasian people. For example, from 2012 to 2014, African Americans account for 85% of the vehicle stops, 90% of the citations, 93% of the arrests, yet, like I stated earlier, are 67% of the population. Furthermore, African Americans are twice as likely than white drivers to be searched during vehicle stops, but are 26% less likely to be in possession of any kind of contraband. To make stats a little bit more scary, I guess, from 2011 to 2013, it was found that there are 2 main laws that basically are meant to play out on racial lines. For example, 95% of manner of walking in road rage charges were given to African Americans. Similarly, 94% of failure to comply charges also given to African Americans, which are just hints that this system is really inequitable. And so this lifestyle and this way of life for people of color definitely played a role in leading to the protests that happened in Ferguson and the resulting syllabus. And this all kind of jumped off on August 9th, 2014. Mike Brown and his friend were at a convenience store, and as they were walking home, Officer Darren Wilson drove by them and initially talked to them about walking in the middle of the road. Eventually that confrontation turned into Mike Brown being shot to death by Darren Wilson. His body laid in the road for about 4 hours before it was covered with a sheet. I chose that picture as opposed to just his uncovered body. And at this point, protests immediately started jumping off, and people from Ferguson, from St. Louis, and really from all over the United States came to Ferguson in solidarity, and also to really show the nation that black men cannot continue being killed, and black women, by police officers. As this was going on, definitely it resonated with all kinds of citizens in the United States, and people were definitely left with questions and trying to figure out how could we be living in a time with slavery so far behind us in times that still feel like slavery. One of the results was that Dr. Marcia Chatelain began compiling a list of resources, which turned into the Ferguson syllabus, and you can find that by clicking here. And now I'm going to pass it off to Caritza.
Thanks, Julie. So we're going to focus on Dr. Chatelain for a moment. She is one of the key players in this movement. She is a speaker, a writer, and a teacher. She's currently the Associate Professor of History and African American Studies at Georgetown University, and she's from Chicago, Illinois. Her research is focused on black girls, especially during the Great Migration. She wrote a book on this topic in 2015, and is currently writing her second book on race and fast food. On August 27th of 2014, Dr. Chatelain developed the idea of creating a curriculum to encourage educators to hold conversations with their students about the events that took place in Ferguson and how we all as a country got to this place. She began crowdsourcing information, and very quickly the hashtag and all the information gathered took off. She says back in the day when researchers and educators had something to say, one would write a piece and hopefully it would get distributed widely. but with the quote here, she talks about the impact social media made on this idea and how it made it possible to include more people than she thought. So here we focus a little bit on the movement itself and who were the contributors. The hashtag wound up spreading around the world and gained contributors from many walks of life. We see some examples from professors in higher ed to high school teachers and even the founder of Build-A-Bear Workshop. The content itself was also diverse, ranging in issues from white privilege, racism, policing, and preparing our young people to be leaders. Art and music became a medium to tackle some of these issues and were included as part of the curriculum. On this slide, 2 artists are profiled for speaking publicly and using their voice after the events in Ferguson. Rapper Killer Mike took to CNN and other news sources to speak out about the current status quo for Black men in America. As the son of a police officer, he speaks with much respect to what the police force could be. His quote reads, "Whatever this country is willing to do to the least of us, it will do one day to us all." J. Cole took to the very popular Late Show with David Letterman and performed his new song, Be Free. After the song was released, J. Cole said in an interview, quote, "It could have been me, easily. It could have been my best friend. I am tired of being desensitized to the murder of Black men." Thank you.
All right, now we're going to talk briefly about Dr. Chatelain's targeted audience. So Dr. Chatelain compared the unrest in Ferguson, Missouri to the 1992 riots in Los Angeles, California. However, she realized that the students at the time were either too young to remember or were not even born during the 1992 riots to have something to pull from in comparison to what had just happened in Ferguson. She, as well as many other educators, were concerned about how students understood this. Therefore, Dr. Chatelain wanted professors to commit to thinking and finding ways to talk about the incident. So the Ferguson syllabus started off as a small call from the community to college and university professors on Twitter. Soon she was taken aback by the amount of support and frankly the amount of professors that she found using Twitter. Shortly after, a wider range of educators started joining in the conversation and as well as contributing to the Ferguson syllabus campaign. Hundreds of recommendations have been made or contributed to the Crossroads syllabus for areas such as African American history, urban history, race, violence, civil rights, community organizing, leadership, and activism, as well as arts such as music, film, poetry, graphic design, and paintings. Can we go to the next slide? But as with every movement, there are people that believe that addressing this tragedy is too difficult and too controversial in K through 12th grade classrooms. However, the Ferguson syllabus has progressed. Like my partner just said, there's been a collaborative document that has grown and developed with general guidelines for age ranges to help address these concerns. So, for example, K through 4th grade can begin by helping them with articulating the feelings and recommending certain children's books. 5th through 8th grade can start by framing in-classroom conversations in terms of racial history, as well as focusing on issues of leadership, public servants, and governance. Moving on to high school students, since they're better prepared, they suggested that they could start addressing broader questions about ethics and the social contract. It can also help them to start visualizing their own roles as citizens in their own communities. And lastly, at the college level, students in the college level as well as adults can begin to address the more complex ideas such as structural issues. And now I'll pass it on to Jennifer.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to turn on the mic. So I'm going to discuss the impacts and success of the Ferguson syllabus. Dr. Chatelain set out initially simply to kind of honor the Ferguson students whose classes were canceled on the first day of school due to the uprising in Ferguson, by encouraging all educators to use that as a day to discuss what was happening. And by that measure, the fact that the end result has been, and continuing, crowdsourced list of resources that are vast, that are diverse, that reach all levels. It was a clear success of a campaign. It went far beyond her initial goal of just dedicating that first day of school to discussing Ferguson, and has become the impetus behind, trying to get a lot of educators talking about these issues in the classroom where they may have previously felt uncomfortable or lacked the resources to do so. We can also see, even though the number of people tweeting with the Ferguson syllabus hashtag has decreased in the last year or so, that there are kind of these parallel hashtag movements related to syllabus that continue to keep this idea going, like the Black Lives Matter syllabus, the Charleston syllabus, the Orlando syllabus, there was a Lemonade syllabus. So it's kind of lived on in that sense. The strength of the syllabus is partly its multivocality, the fact that, as people have said, there's so many different people contributing to this work, that it reaches all content areas, that there's resources for all grade levels, and that makes it a really powerful source to use in any and all classrooms. Another strength is it challenged traditional curricular content. So there are, often holes in our curriculum where we don't discuss things like the history of oppression, the history of police brutality, or just simply the rich history behind people of color and other marginalized groups. And so this kind of tried to fill in some of those holes in what's traditionally in certainly high school curriculums, but also, or high school K through 12 curriculums, but also into college. It provided a good resource for teachers who were willing to talk about these issues in class, but maybe lacked the articles or the videos or the encouragement or the community to talk to about how to do it. And those were all major strengths. Vanilla and Rosa wrote a piece where they researched the Ferguson hashtag as kind of an ethnographic study. And what they concluded was these hashtag campaigns, things like Ferguson, Black Lives Matter, Michael Brown, can be understood as a powerful response to African Americans' ongoing experiences of abject inequality in an age of alleged colorblindness. So this notion that we live in this colorblind society is being challenged by things like the Ferguson syllabus, and say, well, if we're so colorblind, why don't we talk about these things in our classrooms? And here's the value in talking about these things in our classrooms. We can see over on the side the graphic that I know is difficult to read shows the other hashtags that were linked to Ferguson syllabus. So things like Black Lives Matter, Ferguson, Student Chat, Ferguson Decision, United Blue, those were all the most highly hashtagged, most frequent hashtags that showed up alongside Ferguson syllabus. So you can see kind of the general ethnography of the Ferguson syllabus work and community was kind of all tied to that movement. And then in terms of weaknesses, it can be really difficult in 2.5 years to collect and search all the resources that were tweeted, and so that makes it, while it's a really rich resource, maybe a difficult one to navigate, particularly if you're new to it and don't really know where to look. Obviously, an issue with Twitter in general is internet trolls who might capitalize on the hashtag and use it for their own good. This was a very small-scale change, so while it did empower teachers, individual teachers, it didn't necessarily change larger systems or change larger, curriculum ideas. So it was, kind of an individual action type thing. And then, the nature of Twitter too is that sometimes you only reach the choir. So you only see the things that your friends or the people that you follow retweet or tweet, and if you're not following people who are on the same philosophical page as you, we may never reach the people that really need access to things like the Ferguson syllabus. And I'm going to pass it on.
So when considering some of the course themes and the complexities relating to active youth-based citizenship in a social age, one of the key areas to look at is how often schools are a site of struggle, and taking into account a number of cases such as the Pretoria Girls' High in South Africa, where girls are being told to wear their hair a certain way and not talk in their African language, or Piranha in Brazil, where students are occupying schools to protest reformed curriculums, frozen spending, and limited political discussion in the classroom, all the way to the United States, too, where in Spring Valley High in South Carolina, a girl was flipped in her desk and thrown by an officer, and other girls were arrested for just filming this. And so you see all these struggles in schools, but how are these struggles actually addressed to other students? A lot of times these events might be considered singularities and barely touched upon, and really students get most of their exposure and learn about these events through the media, which doesn't always capture the entire picture. And kind of through like the strong-arm responses by administrators and police and politicians, these social control is kind of put into place to intimidate students into remaining quiet and behaving a certain way in school. And so it creates these so-called moral panics, again, through the media and how these events are represented. And deviance is often stigmatized without actually considering many of the factors. And I think what the Ferguson syllabus does is bring a lot of these issues into the classroom and addresses them responsibly by looking at history, science, politics of these issues and how this affects the youth. I think very much this Ferguson syllabus is a rhizome, as we studied in class, where it brings together a lot of heterogeneity in the topics, and it's more of a process. It's not a top-to-bottom syllabus. It's one that people can, again, it's crowdsourced, and people can contribute to as they see fit and use in a manner where they can kind of pick and choose the topics that they want to incorporate into their classrooms. And so I think an important quote from Monique Morris in Push Out was, for many black girls, interactions between the justice system and schools often do not begin or end in school. And again, as with the case with Michael Brown, he was killed in the streets after graduation. But it's important to look at how these events affect youth in the classroom too, as well as outside the classroom. And so Ferguson syllabus is an opportunity for teachers and youth to engage in open dialogue and to kind of help them understand each other and build trust by bringing up these issues and seeking to understand how they make youth feel, like their perspectives on this, and then also teaching them, you know, what led to these events, so it's not just, you know, what they learned through media. Next slide, please. And then it's important also to see how youth communicate and how they express themselves in the current day and age. And again, youth communicate largely through media and visually by looking at memes. And as you can see, like, the syllabus includes a lot of references and a lot of uses of music, like the J. Cole song Be Free, Lauryn Hill, hashtag campaigns, tweets, social media, graffiti, as we've seen with the graffiti of Edward Crawford throwing the tear gas back at the police, and how these symbols are used to kind of bring youth together to rally around these causes. And the Ferguson syllabus does a great job of using these to kind of communicate to youth and also allow students to kind of have their voice and through their art, through the music, and the way they communicate, incorporate into a syllabus. And also, I mean, this can be seen not just through the Ferguson syllabus, but around the world. When you look at things like the Egyptian revolution and the use of Khalid Said and his death at the hands of police also produced this symbol for martyrdom that youth were able to rally around. And then again, his face was used as a symbol of expression to bring people together. And also with the Chicano movement, this is also very evident through poetry and plays. And a specific poem, I Am Joaquin, kind of helped solidify their identity and kind of gave them something to rally around. And so, again, these symbols in media and the creation of identity. Students are the creators, youth, I should say, are creators and consumers of this content and of this media. And so it's important to kind of recognize their voice and their creations in order to fully understand this picture. And I think the Ferguson syllabus does a great job of incorporating this into the classroom. Thanks.
So that concludes our presentation. Thank you for checking it out, and we look forward to comments and feedback in the forum. Good night.